Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. We're going to look at Matthew 25, verses 1 through 13. I think this may have been a part of Sermon 10 in our series when we went verse by verse through Matthew. And to clarify, it's not the typical devotion we've done through our Each One Reach One series here. It's not a prophecy and a fulfillment. It is a parable about being ready in light of prophecy. And so I feel that that's pertinent as we're kind of surveying some of these examples in Matthew, because this parable is prophetic. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the groom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they didn't take oil with them, but the wise one took oil in their flasks with their lamps. When the groom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. All right, so here's what's happening contextually. During preparation for that year of marriage, the bride would live with her father, and one of her jobs was to get her wedding gown ready, and it was to be spotless. And meanwhile, the groom was adding a room onto his father's house. He was preparing a place for his bride at his father's house. Can you see how all of this is similar to the whole prophetic scene? We, as the church, are the bride of Christ. According to Ephesians 5, we are to be presented to him one day spotless and without sin. He told his disciples, I've gone to prepare a place for you. In my Father's house, there are many rooms, many dwellings, right? And so this is all one big Jewish wedding ceremony. When the groom was ready, he'd show up. But it was kind of like the closing episodes of The Office, and it's a surprise. You have all of, think like the bridesmaids, ready. 5 of them are prepped and ready, and they know that the groom is going to show up anytime. And as soon as we hear the trumpet, there's actually a trumpet even mentioned in the previous chapter of Matthew leading into this one, they are ready to go. But then you got 5 who aren't really ready. They're foolish, they're unprepared, they're not acting like they really think that the groom's going to come. And so the groom is delayed. This parable is intended to prepare the bride of Christ for the delay of the groom and to have us ever vigilant generationally and to point out the foolishness of thinking like, well, our groom has been delayed, so maybe he's not coming. Maybe we can just kind of get drowsy. Maybe we can just fall asleep. Maybe just take a nap on the whole prophecy thing. And the ones who have oil in their flasks with their lamps, they are the wise ones, according to verse 4. In the middle of the night, there was a shout, here's the groom, come out to meet him. How many of you guys, let me know in the comments, remember that song, The Midnight Cry? Brother Sammy at Heritage Baptist Church used to save that song for special occasions. The Midnight Cry. This is where it came from. In the middle of the night, there was a shout. That's the midnight cry. Here's the groom. Come out to meet him. Then all the virgins got up and trimmed their lamps. Okay, they get up and they light their lamps. They're ready. The foolish ones said to the wise ones, give us some of your oil because our lamps are going out. Okay, so to trim means to add oil and ignite and get ready. You trim the wick, you add oil, you light it. And so you've got your light, you're ready to follow the groom into the wedding festivities, to go with the groom to the place that's been prepared. The wise ones answered, no, there won't be enough for us and you. Go instead to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves. But at this point, it's too late. It's the middle of the night, right? When they had gone to buy some, the groom arrived. And those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. So in the middle of the night, these foolish bridesmaids, they go get some oil, but they've missed the big entry into the party, into the banquet. The gates were open, the groom was there. Those that had ample oil and were vigilant and were ready get to go with the groom into the banquet. And then these remaining virgins outside, these 5 foolish virgins who weren't ready, who didn't conduct themselves as if the groom were coming at any moment, they go back to the banquet and it's shut. Later, the rest of the virgins also came and said, Master, open up for us. Now, it says master, master here, but I think that the original Greek is Kyrio, Kyrio. I think it's Lord, Lord. As in Matthew 7, is that verse 21? Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father. He replied, truly, I tell you, I don't know you. That's also Matthew 7. Is that Matthew 7:23? Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father. And Jesus describes this exact scenario apocalyptically, in which people who claim to have worked many miracles in his name and driven out demons in his name and everything, and he says, away from me, you evildoers, you workers of iniquity, I never knew you. So you can see the echoes here. If this is indeed Kyrio, Kyrio, Lord, Lord, and this is I don't know you, you can see the parallels between this passage. This is Matthew 25, 1 through 13. You see the parallels between Matthew 25, 11 and that teaching from Matthew 7. Therefore, be alert, because you don't know either the day or the hour. This is pertinent to any church that's studying prophecy. God means this stuff. So you got to live your life as if he means it. He gives us this parable to describe as foolish those who don't live like the groom is coming at any moment. And they don't prepare to keep the light burning, to follow him in to the heavenly banquet. They're conducting themselves as if they don't really believe. And they are not allowed in because they don't really know the groom. The fact that they don't really think he's coming, as indicated by the fact that they're not prepared for him to arrive, is confirmed by the fact that they shout through the door when it's too late, and they're greeted with, they're met with the response, I don't know you. So you see, if they really knew the groom, they'd know he meant what he said. When he said, I've gone to prepare a place for you. In my Father's house, there are many dwellings. I wouldn't have told you this if it weren't so. If they really knew Jesus, really knew that he meant that, they would have lived their whole lives preparing for his imminent arrival, keeping the lamp burning. Okay? COVID had this effect. The doom and gloom narrative is like COVID just like gutted church attendance. I don't think that COVID really affected church attendance among the majority of the devout. Okay. And I'm not speaking disparagingly of people who face all sorts of mobility issues and physically couldn't come to church or anything like that. But I am saying that much of the decline in church attendance since the COVID era was probably kind of a refining of the church. If you're not acting like he's coming back tomorrow, you're currently conducting yourself like one of the foolish virgins. You've let your lamp go out. You're no longer lighting up the dark. Maybe Jesus is delayed in coming. Maybe he's not really going to arrive. If you live your life like that, you're acting like you don't know Jesus. And you're going to be caught off guard by his arrival. And it'll be too late to scramble and buy oil and trim your lamp and go to the gate and you can knock on the door and say, Lord, Lord, but I was in church back in 2019 and all the way up to March of 2020. But he'll say to you, I never knew you. So this is pertinent to a church studying prophecy. Live like you believe what we're reading right now. Every generation of pastor for the last 2,000 years has felt like Christ could come tomorrow. Can you imagine being a pastor in the 1940s? You would have seen what really looked like a huge number of pieces on the prophetic chessboard moving in rapid succession. I mean, you could have looked at the rise of the prominence of Adolf Hitler and been like, that guy's like the Antichrist. You could have seen the persecution and then subsequent resurrection of Israel on May 14th, 1948, and been like, whoa, Ezekiel has come true. Zechariah has come true. Jeremiah has been proven right. Like all these prophecies are being fulfilled left and right. Can you imagine being a pastor in the 40s? You would have felt like, whoa, at this rate, if these prophecies keep getting fulfilled this rapidly, like Jesus is going to come back before the 1950s. You would have had good reason to believe that. Now, there are still other pieces on the chessboard to be moved prophetically, but who's to say that God couldn't do what he did in the 40s again and just suddenly move a bunch of pieces all at once? Every generation of pastor has lived convinced, man, it could be tomorrow. And every pastor in the 50s thought that. And they were right to think that. But then they passed away, went on into glory. Older pastors in the 1960s likewise had reasons to believe he's coming back tomorrow. But then those older pastors who died in the 60s went on into glory. In the 70s, the same thing. The 80s, the same thing. The 90s, the same thing. Every generation of older pastor who died in the 2010s had reason to believe that Christ was coming back tomorrow. And now, here we are in the 2020s. And I just feel like he could come tomorrow. Every generation of pastor has had reason to believe that he could come tomorrow. And these are the pastors who keep their lamps lit because they believe the groom when he says he's going to arrive and it's going to be time for the wedding banquet. And it's only foolish virgins, the foolish bridesmaids, who don't bother to even have oil in their lamps to light up the dark while they wait on the arrival of the groom. Don't be a fool. Believe Jesus. Because you know Jesus, you know he means what he says. And so you'll keep your lamp lit. He gave us this parable to prepare ourselves for the delay of the groom. So, are you wise? Or are you a fool? While we study prophecy, this seems all the more pertinent. Be about the business of God. Not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, think, Master, Master, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only he who does the will of my Father. Be about God's will as we wait on the arrival of the groom. Keep your lamps lit in the dark because he could arrive any moment.